A Skechers performance shoe? Is that an oxymoron? Are Skechers really made for performing in anything other than your grandma's mall walking group? I'm Justin from Pickleball Pursuit, and we're going to take a deeper look at the Skechers Viper Court Pro 2.0s. At the top here, we'll do a quick summary, a TLDW, a too long didn't watch, for those of you who just want to know what you need to know, and get on out of here. On the spectrum from speed shoe to stability shoe, minimal shoe to maximal shoe, these come in definitely on the side of a speed shoe, a more minimal shoe. They have a very lightweight upper and they play light on the court. However, they actually offer pretty good cushion and support underfoot that you may not see in a lot of the competitors in the speed shoe segment. Some of the pros that you'll look for here is, like I said, really good cushion underfoot, a really light feeling and fast feeling shoe, great traction from a very wide, flat herringbone outsole, and just a very smooth and not clunky feeling shoe. Some of the cons you might want to watch out for is the fit. Right now, these only come in medium width. There may be wide sizes in the future. With the original Viper Court Pros, there were wide sizes, so that could potentially be offered down the line, but I haven't seen any yet. And as is, these do fit very true to size. I measured these versus court shoes from 9 other brands, and these kind of fall right in the middle of all the categories. And I will say that the lockdown in the heel and the rear foot's really good, but the lockdown in the forefoot in the front area here may not be ideal, especially if you have more of a square-shaped foot or a wider forefoot. As you can see, the toe box taper is pretty sharp here. So if you don't have more of a pointed foot, this could probably come into play and squish your pinky toe. Beyond that, and really stacking on top of that, the front foot, although it locks you down, it doesn't really keep you in the center above the footbed very well, so it allows for a good bit of sliding. And without any midsole sculpting up around the outside here, there is opportunity for roll risk if your foot is able to slide out and over the outside of the shoe here, if you're a wide footer, or like I said, if it's just not fitting you well. Another thing that may just be an annoyance for some, or may not even be a factor for others, is the tongue is not gusseted. It can freely move around left and right. And I found that anytime I was to lace these high or utilize a runner's knot, the tongue would slide to the side, and there was some lace pressure here that you definitely can feel and causes some discomfort. And while we're talking about the laces, that's probably another con. This is maybe a small one. Laces are easy to replace, but these laces are both stretchy and quite short. So the two issues I ran into there, with them being stretchy, I found myself having to relace at least once every session, which isn't something I normally had to do with other shoes. They would just, I would crank them down, I would start playing, they would stretch a little bit, and then I'd find them loose again, and I have to relace them. And with them being a little bit short, as I said before, if you go to the top eyelet or if you go to a runner's knot, you barely have enough to tie them. Honestly, you may need to look into longer laces. And for those of you wondering, they're 47 inches. So if you end up with this shoe and need to buy some longer laces, those are the measurements to look out for. Ultimately, those are the kind of pros and cons of this shoe. I think they compete well in this speed shoe space with other shoes like the Babolat Jet Mach 3, the Mizuno Wave Exceed Tour, the New Balance 996. They offer kind of some of what all those shoes offer, and they do it at a great value. With the affiliate link in the description, you can get these for just under $104 at Pickleball Central. Okay, and if you want a little bit more detail, I'm sure you've seen this one sitting next to me here, but I did dissect a pair of these, and we'll go through kind of the construction of the shoe, and at the end I'll talk about my playability thoughts as it pertains to pickleball specific playability, because after all, this is a pickleball specific shoe. So have they nailed it or not? We'll start with the upper and make our way down through the midsole and into the outsole. The upper on this shoe is a full textile woven, so the entire shoe, front to back, is a woven material, and it has some TPU yarns in there, so there's essentially no stretch, which is really good for containment, but you do start to feel it in the comfort category, which I'll talk about in just a second. The front sections of the shoe are woven a little bit more tightly to prevent some stretch and make sure we get the forefoot lockdown. and you'll see that around the toe cap and, you know, all the way to the medial side, we have a fuse material here to protect from dragging and sliding. In the rear foot of the shoe, you do get a whole extra layer on the interior of the upper here, and it's quite nicely padded. And the rear foot of this shoe is very comfortable. The containment and the lockdown are very good. And as you move to the forefoot of the shoe, on this white area here, there is no extra layer of fabric, which is really good for breathability, but it's not quite as comfortable as you might expect on your feet up here. The padding around the ankle and Achilles is definitely good enough, and I never had any type of discomfort in this area. Moving down to the midsole, for here I want to bring in the insole as well, because this is a huge part of why you have such good step-in comfort in these shoes. This Skechers Arch Fit insole is an EVA insole rather than a polyurethane foam, which means that you really feel it when you first step in. It's nice and cushy. However, it does kind of bottom out. You know, I have about 20 hours on these, and I definitely can tell where my foot has worn these down. In the forefoot up here, the thickness is about average for an insole, but you may be able to tell here that when you go to the arch, you get quite a thick slab of EVA in the insole itself. And this is called Skechers Arch Fit, and you can absolutely feel the comfort and support. And this is by far more than most shoe brands do at all for your arch. Having additional arch support and arch comfort built into the shoe is really nice. And then the heel is pretty nice. It has a little heel cup in here just to keep you planted. Not too much cushion, but honestly, you don't need it, because once you move into the actual shoe itself, you'll notice this blue section, there's an EVA strobel board across the whole shoe. So this is essentially an entire extra layer of EVA padding. And then beneath that, we have, this is a single foam. You'll notice there are relief cuts underneath the heel, and it gets a little thinner in the front. I measured about a 7.5 millimeter heel to toe drop. And the stack height in these it's more than enough to keep you comfortable and you don't feel any pain in your heel or the ball of your foot from the court, but it's not so much that you feel yourself sinking in. And that this type of foam in here, I would call it probably a court feel foam, because it's not really an energy returning bouncy foam, but it's also not like a super mushy memory foam type setup. So it strikes a good middle ground. It gives you more than enough protection, but it's not really returning energy to you in any way. Beneath the midsole foam, you will see that we have a plastic shank here that extends from the heel to just underneath the arch. That is, again, really good for arch support and arch protection, and I'm really happy to see that it's in here. Shank plates you'll see sometimes, especially, you know, outside of court shoes. You look at super shoes in the ultra marathon running space, they'll have carbon plates that extend all the way into the forefoot, and then even some court shoes do it as well. And what that does is provide essentially a springboard that whenever you put the energy in, it's giving it back to you. So you don't necessarily get that here, but I'm still happy to see this shank. It does its job. It gives you enough torsional stability to keep your arch happy and healthy. Now onto the outsole. This is actually probably a high point of this shoe, to be honest. What you have here is a classic tried and true full bed of herringbone across the entire outsole, and this says Goodyear rubber on it. So in the medial forefoot, you have it running in one direction, and then across the lateral forefoot and into the heel, you have a sort of thinner, sharper herringbone running in the opposite direction. And what this allows you to do for playability is in the forefoot section where you might be on your toes, you might be on the ball of your feet. This is a little bit wider spaced and it's flatter, so it allows for easier pivoting. It's not as sharp of a grip. However, in the other parts of the shoe, the outside of your foot where you might be planting, or your heel where you really don't want to be sliding around, it's going to give you a sharper grab, and that's going to keep you more secure in your footwork. So I really like this design. It's simple. They didn't go over the top or anything, but it absolutely does the job. And then you'll notice on the outsole that it wraps up pretty aggressively around the toe and around the medial side here. Now this is great, and there's one thing about it that I don't particularly love. Number one, it's great for durability because there's a ton of sliding maneuvers on the medial forefoot in pickleball. So having this here means that you get to slide on a really tough rubber outsole rather than, on the upper material. There is also the fused drag guard. I'm someone who actually rips holes in my shoes right here quite often from sliding. And when I look closely at these, really it's only slightly grazed or abraded on the drag guard. And that's because this outsole where it curled up was so grippy and so strong that that's where I spent most of my time sliding. So that's good to see. Now, I alluded to the one thing I don't love about it, and that is how square the shape is from the bottom of the outsole to here. So there's no real round at all. And for me, as someone who uses a lot of footwork on the ball of my feet, kind of rocking left to right and shuffling as we do in pickleball, I found this transition to be very abrupt, honestly. If you're totally flat on your feet, you have great traction. If you're fully sliding, that's fine. But as you're sort of rocking from one position to the next, you're sort of in between footwork. You're on like this sharp edge, and it feels like the shoe wants to just give out or completely roll over. So I would have loved to seen this be a little bit more rounded, but I think I do understand why it is designed the way it is. This outsole as a whole is, number one, extremely wide and really flat. Of all the other court shoes I measured, this is the widest 4-foot outsole that I've seen. And then we also have a very wide heel, and again, just totally flat. So when you're planted, you have a really good base, and you can also see like this giant outrigger on the front, which is necessary because of what we talked about earlier in the fit section and in the upper. Because the upper containment isn't the greatest, and your foot is allowed to slide around, you really need this outrigger in order to save the shoe from rolling over whenever your weight transfers out and over the midsole. So how does all that translate to playability? This is a pickleball specific shoe, and at this point I'm only playing pickleball, so I tested it just for pickleball. So I think that the design makes sense, right? This design is centered around a very wide, flat 4-foot, which is where you spend a lot of your time in pickleball. It's not like you're full sprinting a lot around the court. You're most of the time shuffling left to right or kind of making these small corrective steps, as we do on a smaller court. And the other thing I'll say about this shoe is that even though this outsole is, pretty thick, and it's a full bed of outsole from the toe to the heel at, a couple millimeters of tread depth here, it's actually quite flexible. And the midsole foam itself is also flexible. The combination of this, flexible outsole and midsole makes these shoes feel very buttery and very smooth. They're not clunky shoes at all, even though they may look like it with a large, flat, wide outsole. I think that's the danger of having a large, flat outsoles, that you might clunk down and feel like you're walking in bricks, but that's not the case at all. So what's the value proposition, for a pickleball specific shoe? I covered the price earlier, but if you use the affiliate link in the description, these come in at just under $104 without sales, brand new at Pickleball Central. So we're looking at a shoe that's, roughly 100 or a little bit more, and all of its competitors, the Babolat Jet Mach 3, the Asics Solution Speed FF3s, the New Balance 996 and Mizuno Wave Exceed Tours are all in the kind of 135 to 150 range. So you do have a price advantage there. Now, for durability, there is no outsole warranty on these, but I will say that the signs for durability look really good. I didn't test these shoes for 6 months, so I can't tell you for sure, but I can tell you that the outsole rubber is about 4.5 millimeters thick total, which is pretty thick for a shoe, and the tread depth is a solid 2.2 millimeters, which is more than most shoes, in this range. And I don't have really, after 20 hours, any flat spots or any hot spots. And with the amount that it wraps up over the toe and over the medial side, I think the signs for durability look really good. With all that said, the value proposition is really good if these are going to fit you. If you have a medium foot, if you don't have a squared off toe, then these may be a good fit for you if you want a shoe that just basically does everything you need it to do and kind of feels light and smooth at the same time while protecting the bottom of your foot. This is something that you can play in for multiple hours, as I did, without having any sore feet underneath like some, really minimal shoes. So to answer the question from the top, are Skechers made for performing in anything other than your grandma's mall walking group? Yes.